Hi, my name is Paul Grogan, and in this gaming rules video, I'm going to be covering the rules for the board game Dungeon Lords, originally released in 2009 by Czech Games Edition. This video has been produced thanks to the successful Kickstarter campaign for the 5-year anniversary edition, so thanks to all the backers for making this possible. In Dungeon Lords, 2 to 4 players each take on the role of an aspiring master of the underground, building up a nice happy dungeon and then trying to protect it from groups of pesky adventurers that feel the need to come and pay you a visit. The game is played over 2 years, and each year consists of a building stage where you will hire monsters, dig tunnels, install traps and so on, and then a combat stage where the adventurers enter your dungeon and your task is to stop them conquering as much as possible. After 2 years the game is over and the Ministry of Dungeons awards you points based on how well you have done. As long as you've scored more than 0, you've succeeded and you've got your Dungeon Lords license, but it's actually the player with the most points that wins the game. The progress board is used to track all of the phases that happen in the building stage. Perform all the steps shown below the progress marker and then move the marker to the right. Notice that a lot of the icons are repeated. This is because you do roughly the same thing 4 times, once for each season. The first thing that happens in each season is the new round phase, where you draw 2 rooms and place them here, 3 monsters and place them here, you reveal the next event tile and also draw 4 adventurers. The adventurers are placed in a specific order on the progress board, with the weakest ones, with the simpler glyphs, being placed on the left. If more than one adventurer has the same glyph, leave them in the order they were drawn. Then, move the progress marker to the next phase. These icons indicate you give orders to your minions by assigning 3 cards. There are 8 places on the main game board that you can send your minions to, and each player has 8 order cards that match these places. 2 of your 8 cards will already be face up on your player board. These are inaccessible orders and you cannot choose them this round. From the 6 remaining, choose 3 which you want to use and place them face down here. Once all players have chosen their cards, everyone reveals their first card, and then in player order, each player puts one of their minions on the place that matches their card. The first minion in a place goes on the top spot, with other minions going on the spots below. So in this example, blue is the start player and the minions will get placed as follows. This process is repeated for the second and third order cards. There can only be 3 minions in each place. If you try to put a 4th, then the minion is instead put back on the order card. This shows that he was unable to carry out the orders you gave him. After all minions have been assigned, the places are resolved one by one, starting with the top left. A nearby village is the main source of food in the game, which is needed to feed some of your monsters. The first minion to visit the village pays 1 gold and gets 2 food. When the second minion arrives, however, the villagers have no more food for sale. The minion threatens the villagers and they give up what they have spare. This costs the player reputation and their marker on the evilometer moves up. More on this later. When the third minion arrives, threats alone get him nowhere. After carrying out those threats, however, he steals all the remaining food the village has, along with the gold that the first minion paid. On these spaces, your minion does his best to improve your reputation. For each of these symbols, move your marker on the evilometer down 1 space. This symbol allows you to use your spies to take a sneak peek at one of the 4 combat cards. This will give you an advantage during the combat stage. This action allows you to dig new tunnels in your dungeon based on which spot your minion is on. Each imp can dig 1 tunnel. If you are on the 3rd spot, you may dig up to 4 new tunnels, but ministry regulations dictate that the work must be supervised by a 4 imp. For each tunnel you dig, place a tunnel tile onto your player board adjacent to an existing tunnel or room. For safety reasons, you may not dig out an entire 2x2 section. So in this example, you are not allowed to dig a tunnel on these spaces. Mining gold is very similar to digging tunnels. The spots allow you to send imps to your unconquered tunnels to mine gold. Like digging tunnels, the 3rd spot means that you need to have a 4 imp overseeing the others. You can mine gold from a tunnel that you have dug this turn, but each tunnel can only be mined by 1 imp. Imps are great. They do the jobs that nobody else wants to do, and they are happy to work. You get more of them by paying the costs shown. New imps are not available for digging or mining, as those actions have already been dealt with, but they can be used later in the round. On the edge of town, a few enterprising imps have set up a workshop where they make traps. They sell their first trap for 1 gold and get so excited by their sale that they offer a discount on the second trap. Unfortunately, only when they have sold the second trap do they realise that they actually gave it away for free. So for the third spot, they increase the price to 2 gold, but offer a buy one, get one free deal. Unlike the other actions, this place is resolved in reverse order, with the minion on the lower spots taking their turn before the others. This is indicated by the length of the action space. Note that the minion on the third spot will get the first choice of monster, but you have to pay an additional food. When your minion takes his turn, choose one of the available monsters and pay the cost, as shown in the top right. Place the monster you hired on your player board ready for the combat stage. Trolls are especially useful, as they also give you a troll figure which is placed in your imp den and can be used later on. As with hiring monsters, players buy rooms in reverse order. The bottom 2 spots allow you to pay a gold to buy a room. The top spot allows you to get a room for free, but only if there's one left. Rooms are placed over the top of a tunnel tile in your dungeon, but each room has a zone diagram indicating where it must be placed. The souvenir shop, for example, must be placed near the surface to attract customers. You also cannot have 2 rooms adjacent to each other. Once all minion actions have been resolved, the progress marker is moved along again. This next phase allows you to activate your production rooms. Each room shows how many imps are needed and the benefit you get. This one, for example, allows you to use 2 imps and a romantic meal, and as if by magic, an extra imp is created. If you have a troll figure, you may use this in place of an imp, as trolls like to help out. The other thing that happens in this phase is that you get some of your order cards back. Take back the 2 previously inaccessible orders. Also, take back the order that you placed in position 1. However, if there is a minion on one of your other cards, showing that he did not carry out your order, you may choose to take this card back instead of the card in position 1. 2 cards will now be left on your player board. Slide these up to the top spaces. These are your inaccessible orders for the next round. The next phase shows that the starting player changes and all imps return home. After performing all of the previous phases, it is the end of winter, and you repeat the same thing again for the remaining seasons, as shown from the icons on the progress board. However, at the end of spring, summer and autumn, 2 other phases are performed. The first of these is the event phase. The event tiles begin the year face down, but they get flipped over one at a time at the start of each season. There are 3 different event tiles. On payday, players must pay the wages of each of their monsters. This is the same cost as it was to hire them. Goblins, for example, will get by on a sack of mushrooms. Vampires, however, need to be let out from time to time, which upsets the local villagers. If you are unable or unwilling to pay, the monster leaves your service and rampages across the countryside, gaining you 1 evil. This event tile indicates that it's time to pay the Ministry of Dungeons your annual taxes. The cost is 1 gold for each 2 tiles in your dungeon, rooms or tunnels. For each gold you do not pay, the Ministry gives you a red mark, and each of these loses you 3 points at the end of the game. The third tile is a special event. For your first game, it is recommended that you treat this as if it were blank, as the game is hard enough already. For details on the special events, check out the rulebook. In this phase, the adventurers are assigned, 1 to each player. The leftmost adventurer is assigned to the nicest player, the one whose marker on the evilometer is in the lowest position. The next adventurer goes to the second nicest dungeon lord, and so on, with the rightmost one going to the player highest on the evilometer. When you get your first adventurer, put it on the space at the top of the entrance to your dungeon. Each adventurer you get after this goes behind, except for the brave warrior who pushes his way to the front. Each year there is a mighty paladin who stays on this space polishing his armour until he senses great evil. If your marker reaches this line on the evilometer, the paladin sets out on his quest, and you place him on the space in front of your other adventurers. Once the paladin has left his home, he will not return, even if your marker later drops below the line. However, if another player becomes more evil than you, the paladin moves to their dungeon instead. I'll explain more about the paladin in the combat section, but you can probably tell from all the icons that they're pretty tough. After the building stage is completed, the party that has gathered at the entrance to your dungeon attacks. Before combat begins, prepare the progress board by placing the 4 combat cards from the central board onto the correct spaces as shown. The order is important, because some players may have spied on a card during the building stage. Combat takes place over a series of 4 combat rounds, and each round the adventurers try to conquer one of the tiles in your dungeon. Your objective is to try and stop them conquering as many as possible and to defeat these so-called heroes. At the start of each round there is a planning phase, where each player decides which tile in their dungeon the adventurers are going to try and conquer. You must choose an unconquered tile nearest the entrance. So in the first round of combat, you must choose this tile as it is the closest. If this is conquered, then in round 2, you may choose either this one or this one, as both are the same distance from the entrance. The adventurers return to the surface after each round, and the next tile you choose must again be the one closest to the entrance, irrespective of where the party was before. So if in round 2 you choose this tile, and it gets conquered, then in round 3 you must choose this one, because it is the closest unconquered tile to the entrance. Once you have indicated which tile the adventurers move to, you decide how many traps and monsters you will use to try and stop them. For combat in a tunnel, you may only use 1 trap and 1 monster. Note, however, that ghosts are special, and you may also use as many of those as you want. If combat takes place in a room, you may use up to 2 monsters and as many ghosts as you want. You may also still only use 1 trap, but because the adventurers might miss the trap with it being in a big room, you have to entice them to the right area by placing a pile of gold. Place 1 gold onto the trap to show this. Once all players have planned, the combat card for that round is then revealed. In order, each player goes through the combat steps, narrating the story for the other players. This is important when learning the game to ensure that all players fully understand the rules. The steps are shown on the player board and are carried out in order from left to right. First, reveal your trap card if you played one, paying the gold to the bank if the combat is in a room. If the trap has an additional cost, you must pay that now. Traps have a variety of effects, but a lot of them wound the adventurers. Damage from traps is reduced by 1 for each of these symbols in the adventuring party. These symbols are found on thieves and paladins. When an adventurer gets damaged, place a wound marker on the tile. If there are as many wounds as there are hit points, the adventurer is defeated, and you place it in your prison, where it's worth points at the end of the game. In this example, the firewall trap will deal damage to each adventurer, but the symbol on the thief prevents the first one. This means that the damage is assigned as shown. Used traps are then discarded. The next step is for fast spells, and it only occurs if the combat card for this round has the fast spells symbol. Also, there needs to be enough magic points in the party to cast the spell. The spell in round 1 requires 1 magic point, round 2 requires 2 magic points, and so on. In our example, the card indicates a fast spell, and we have 2 magic points in the party, so the spell is cast. Word of Peace. We decide not to withdraw our monsters, so we gain 2 evil. Unfortunately, this moves our marker on the evilometer to the Paladin space, and so the Paladin comes and joins the party. Oh dear. Our monsters get to attack next. If you sent more than 1, you may now choose the order in which they attack. Monsters have various abilities, all of which are explained in the rulebook. Our troll, for example, has 2 abilities, and we choose which one to use. He may either attack the front adventurer for 3 points of damage, or, if we feed him some food, he'll attack for 4 instead. Let's assume we've got a food spare, and we decide to spend it. So the front adventurer, which is now the Paladin, is hit for 4 damage. The troll is then turned face down and returned to the monster lair. He cannot be used again this year. The slow magic step is next, which is resolved in the same way as fast magic, but only if the combat card shows the slow magic symbol and there are enough magic points left in the party. The next step is healing, which only happens if a monster attacks and there are adventurers in the party with these symbols. When we planned to use the troll, we didn't count on a paladin turning up, so there wouldn't have been any healing. Unfortunately for us, the paladin has 2 of these symbols, so 2 points of damage are healed from the front adventurer. Note that healing only happens if a monster attacked. If we hadn't used the troll, no wounds would have been healed, even though the party had been damaged by the trap. Finally, there is the conquering step, where the front adventurer suffers fatigue damage equal to the number of blood drops on the combat card. In this case, 2 more damage counters are placed on the paladin. If it weren't for him healing himself, we would have defeated him. At this point, if there is still at least one adventurer remaining, the tile is conquered. Flip it over. It's now completely unusable, but yes, you still have to pay taxes for it. Also, each time you lose a tile, you lose 1 point of evil. Word gets around that a group of adventurers has gotten past your obstacles, and you're clearly not as evil as people first thought. Combat lasts a maximum of 4 rounds. After that, any remaining adventurers leave and travel off to distant lands. If you manage to eliminate all the adventurers, well done. Skip any remaining combat rounds and gloat in your victory whilst you watch the other dungeon lords struggle on. The second year of the game is played in a similar way as the first, but with a few differences. The combat cards are replaced with ones with the gold swords, which are more deadly and have more blood drops on them. The monsters are also bigger and tougher, and include the dragon, the golem, and the demon. The adventurers and the paladin have more hit points and more icons. There are no production rooms in Year 2. Instead, they are a mix of rooms which affect combat and ones which score you extra points. The production rooms from Year 1, however, may now be used twice. So in the chicken coop, you could send 6 imps and produce 2 food. At the trap workshop, the imps are still selling the same old traps. To help business along, they come up with a special sale. Whenever you buy from them, you draw 1 more card than normal, but then you must return 1 trap card to the discard pile, so you get more choice. Combat is the same in Year 2. Tiles that were conquered in the first year remain so, and the adventurers continue to attack unconquered tiles closest to the entrance. After the second year is complete, each dungeon lord totals their own victory points. The scoring overview card lists all of the ways that you can score points. As you can see, you want to be capturing heroes and trying not to get your dungeon conquered. When it comes to awarding titles, refer to the other overview card and award all the titles among the players. All players who have now scored more than 0 receive their Dungeon Lord's license, but it's the player with the most points that wins the game. The Festival Season expansion brings a whole host of new stuff to the game. First of all, there are new monsters, new traps, new combat cards, new rooms, all of which provide an interesting mix of new stuff. There are also now 5 seasons in each year, and 5 rounds of combat. This means that the party of adventurers coming into your dungeon will consist of 4 heroes, but you will have more time to build up your defences. Speaking of the adventurers, there's a new character class. The bard hangs around at the back of the party singing songs of encouragement. These counters prevent damage to your party, either from traps or monsters, but the number of counters the bard provides is reduced by 1 for each missing adventurer. Those songs of courage don't work so well when half the party have been captured. There are also now 2 paladins, an elf and a dwarf. They replace the human paladin from the base game, although there are optional rules to play with all 3. The expansion also includes 8 unique opportunity tiles. From the second season in each year, one of these tiles replaces the standard actions available at one of the places on the central board, but only for that round, and you always see which one is coming next. These new tiles are fully explained in the rulebook, but I'll just cover a few of them here. On these spaces, you send your imps to help the local villagers in growing some crops. You gain 1 food for each imp you send, but you must always have a 4 imp supervising. Once every couple of years, the tunnel permit office closes for an internal audit, and nobody is allowed to dig new tunnels. Instead, you can use your imps to flip back a previously conquered tile, or you may improve one of your existing tunnels. There are 5 different improved tunnels, all of which are explained in the rulebook. Expert monsters are now available for hire. They have increased combatability, but at an additional cost as shown on the tile. Finally, it's become fashionable for aspiring dungeon lords to acquire pets. During the first season of each year, each player will acquire 1 pet. Each pet has a unique ability that may be used once during the game. If not used, they are worth 1 point during scoring. Soft, snakety, warm, snakety, little ball of... Ow! So there we are. Not quite all the rules for the game, but hopefully enough to give you a good overview and to help you learn how to play. Take care and thanks for watching.